The question hung in the air between them, 7 simple words that would alter the course of 2 lives forever. Why didn't you ever tell me before? If you're touched by this story of unexpected connection and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more life-changing moments that remind us how quickly everything can change when we least expect it. Marcus Jenkins checked his watch for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. The company holiday party had stretched well past midnight, and as the designated driver, he couldn't leave until his boss did. Being a single father meant every minute away from home was precious time lost with his daughter, Lily. The babysitter's overtime was already eating into next week's grocery budget. The banquet hall of the Westlake Hotel glittered with festive decorations, but the initial magic had faded hours ago. Now it was just a room full of increasingly intoxicated co-workers, terrible dancing, and Marcus's growing anxiety about getting home. His boss, Catherine Reynolds, was typically the embodiment of corporate professionalism. As CEO of Reynolds Publishing, she maintained a carefully crafted image of cool competence that had earned her both respect and fear throughout the company. Tonight, however, was different. The normally composed Catherine was on her 4th glass of champagne, her carefully styled blonde hair coming loose, her laughter a touch too loud. Marcus had worked as Catherine's executive assistant for 3 years. He knew her schedule better than his own, could anticipate her needs before she voiced them, and had mastered the art of being invisible yet indispensable. What he hadn't mastered was how to approach his increasingly inebriated boss and suggest it might be time to call it a night. Jenkins. Catherine's voice cut through his thoughts. She was making her way toward him, slightly unsteady in her heels. Why aren't you dancing? It's a party. Just making sure everything's running smoothly, Ms. Reynolds, he replied, automatically straightening his tie. Actually, I was wondering if you might be ready to head out soon. It's getting late. Catherine waved a dismissive hand. Always so responsible. That's why you're the best assistant I've ever had. She leaned in conspiratorially. But tonight, I don't want to be responsible. Do you know how exhausting it is? Always being the one who has to make the right decision. There was something vulnerable in her question that caught Marcus off guard. In 3 years, he'd never heard Catherine speak with such raw honesty. I can imagine it's a heavy burden, he said carefully. No, you can't, she replied, but without malice. Nobody can. That's the problem. She sighed, suddenly looking tired beneath the makeup and bravado. But you're right. It's late. We should go. Relief washed over Marcus. I'll call you a car. Nonsense. You're driving me. That's why you haven't been drinking, isn't it? Always thinking ahead, Jenkins. 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself behind the wheel of his modest sedan, Catherine Reynolds in his passenger seat, giving him directions to her penthouse apartment across town. The contrast between them couldn't have been more stark. Her designer dress probably cost more than his monthly rent, while his suit had been purchased on clearance 3 years ago for job interviews. You have a child, don't you, Jenkins? Catherine asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Yes, a daughter. Lily. She's 8. 8, Catherine repeated softly. That's a wonderful age. Still believes in magic but starting to figure out how the world works. She turned to look out the window. I always wanted children. Marcus didn't know how to respond to this unexpected confession. In the office, personal conversations were non-existent. Catherine kept her private life exactly that, private. What happened to Lily's mother? Catherine asked, her filter clearly compromised by alcohol. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter. Car accident. 4 years ago. I'm sorry, Catherine said, and she sounded genuinely remorseful. That must be incredibly difficult. We manage, Marcus replied, uncomfortable with her sympathy. Lily's a resilient kid. Like her father, Catherine murmured, almost to herself. When they arrived at her building, Catherine fumbled with her purse, struggling to find her key card for the private elevator. Marcus gently took her clutch, located the card, and handed it back to her. "Always solving problems," she said with a small smile. Then, to his surprise, she added, "Would you mind seeing me up? I'm feeling a bit unsteady." Thinking of the babysitter waiting at home, Marcus hesitated. But Catherine Reynolds was still his boss, and ensuring her safety seemed the responsible thing to do. He sent a quick text to the sitter explaining he'd be another 15 minutes. The penthouse apartment was exactly what Marcus had imagined, sleek, modern, and impeccably decorated, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city lights. It was also strangely impersonal, like a high-end hotel suite rather than a home. "Beautiful place," he commented politely. "It's empty," Catherine replied, kicking off her heels with a sigh of relief. "Just like my life." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Sorry. Champagne makes me maudlin. You can go, Jenkins. I've kept you long enough." But as she moved toward the kitchen, she stumbled slightly. Marcus instinctively reached out to steady her. "Maybe I should make you some coffee before I leave," he suggested. Catherine looked like she wanted to refuse, but then nodded. "That would be nice. Thank you." While the coffee brewed, Marcus filled a glass with water and placed it in front of her. "Drink this first. It'll help with tomorrow's headache." She looked at him with curious eyes. "You take care of everyone, don't you? Your daughter, your boss, who takes care of you, Jenkins?" The question caught him off guard. "I manage," he repeated his earlier answer. "That's not what I asked." Catherine took a sip of water. "You know, I've never been to your desk. Not once in 3 years. That's strange, isn't it? You come to my office multiple times a day, but I've never seen where you work." "It's just a desk," Marcus said, uncomfortable with her focus on him. "I bet it has pictures of Lily, though. And probably some little trinket she made you. A paperweight or a pencil holder." When Marcus didn't respond, she smiled. "I'm right, aren't I?" He nodded reluctantly. "A clay turtle. She made it in art class last year." "I'd like to see it sometime," Catherine said softly, then seemed to catch herself. "I'm sorry. I'm being inappropriate. The line between personal and professional, it gets blurry sometimes, doesn't it?" Marcus placed a mug of coffee in front of her. "It's fine. You should drink this, then get some rest." Catherine wrapped her hands around the mug but didn't drink. "Do you know why I hired you, Jenkins?" "My organizational skills and previous experience," he suggested. She shook her head. "Your eyes. You have kind eyes. In a world of people trying to climb over each other to get ahead, you looked like someone who would tell me the truth." She laughed softly. "And you have. For 3 years, you've been the only person in my life who doesn't want something from me." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Reynolds, I think." "Catherine," she interrupted. "My name is Catherine. And I think you should sit down and have some coffee with me." Against his better judgment, Marcus found himself sitting across from his boss at her kitchen island, sipping coffee at 1 in the morning while she asked him questions about Lily, about his life before Reynolds Publishing, about the challenges of single parenthood. And strangely, he found himself answering. Perhaps it was the late hour, or the unusual circumstances, but for the first time, Marcus felt like Catherine was seeing him as a person rather than just an employee. When she finally began to yawn, Marcus stood up. "I should go. And you should get some sleep." Catherine nodded, suddenly looking exhausted. "Thank you for getting me home safely. And for the coffee. And the conversation. Of course. Good night, Ms. Reynolds." "Catherine," she corrected again, with a tired smile. "Catherine," he conceded. "I'll see you on Monday." The drive home was a blur of confusion for Marcus. The evening had taken such an unexpected turn that he couldn't quite process it. By the time he paid the babysitter and checked on his sleeping daughter, it was nearly 3 in the morning. He fell into bed fully clothed, too tired to even remove his tie. Morning came too quickly, with Lily bouncing on his bed at 7, eager to tell him about her evening with the babysitter. Marcus dragged himself to the kitchen to make pancakes, their Saturday morning tradition, while Lily chattered about the movie they'd watched and the games they'd played. "Daddy, your phone is ringing," Lily announced, pointing to where his jacket hung over a kitchen chair. Marcus wiped his hands on a dish towel and retrieved his phone, freezing when he saw the caller ID, Catherine Reynolds. "Hello?" he answered cautiously. "Jenkins." Catherine's voice sounded rough. "I need to apologize for last night." "There's nothing to apologize for," he assured her. "You didn't do anything inappropriate. I made you drive me home and then kept you talking until all hours. That was selfish of me." "It's fine, really." There was a pause, then Catherine asked, "Is that your daughter I hear in the background?" Marcus glanced at Lily, who was attempting to set the table. "Yes, that's Lily." Another pause. "I have a terrible hangover and an empty refrigerator. Would it be completely unprofessional of me to ask if I could take you both to breakfast? As a thank you for last night." Marcus was stunned into silence. "Jenkins? Are you there?" "Yes, sorry. I'm just surprised." "Is that a no?" "No. I mean, yes. I mean." Marcus took a breath. "Breakfast would be nice. But you should know that Lily's favorite place is a very un-CEO-like pancake house with sticky tables and waitresses who call everyone Han." To his surprise, Catherine laughed. "Sounds perfect. Text me the address. I'll meet you there in an hour." An hour later, Marcus still couldn't believe he was sitting in a booth at Flapjacks with his daughter and his boss. Catherine had arrived looking nothing like her office self, dressed in jeans and a casual sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Without her usual power suit and perfect makeup, she looked younger, softer somehow. Lily, initially shy, had warmed up quickly when Catherine asked her about school and her favorite subjects. Now they were deep in conversation about Lily's dream of becoming a veterinarian, while Marcus watched in amazement. "My mom was a vet," Catherine was saying. "She used to bring home the most interesting stories about the animals she treated." "Really?" Lily's eyes widened. "Did she let you help sometimes?" "When I was older, yes. I spent many summers working in her clinic." "Why didn't you become a vet too?" Lily asked with a child's directness. A shadow crossed Catherine's face. "Sometimes we make choices based on what other people want for us, not what we want for ourselves. My father wanted me to join his business, and I wanted to make him proud." Marcus found himself leaning forward, suddenly curious about this woman he'd worked for but never really known. "Do you regret it?" he asked before he could stop himself. Catherine looked at him thoughtfully. "Parts of it. I've built something successful, but sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if I'd followed a different path." She smiled at Lily. "That's why it's so important to follow your dreams, even when it's difficult." After breakfast, they found themselves walking through the park across the street, Lily running ahead to the playground while Marcus and Catherine strolled behind. "She's wonderful," Catherine said, watching Lily climb the jungle gym. "You've done an amazing job with her." "Thank you," Marcus replied. "It hasn't been easy, but she makes it worth it." Catherine was quiet for a moment, then asked, "How do you do it? Balance everything?" Marcus shrugged. "Not very well, sometimes. There are days when I feel like I'm failing at everything, being a father, being good at my job. But then there are moments when it all seems to work, and those moments keep me going." "I've never seen this side of you," Catherine admitted. "At work, you're so contained. Efficient." "That's my job," Marcus pointed out. To make your life easier by anticipating problems and solving them before they reach your desk. And you're excellent at it. Catherine stopped walking and turned to face him. But I realize now that I've been missing out by not knowing the person behind the efficiency. There was something in her expression that made Marcus's heart beat faster. Before he could respond, Lily called out, asking him to watch her go down the slide. The morning stretched into afternoon as they walked through the park, got ice cream despite the December chill, and talked more openly than they ever had before. Catherine shared stories about her childhood, her parents' expectations, and the loneliness of success. Marcus told her about meeting Lily's mother in college, their whirlwind romance, and the devastating accident that had left him a single father overnight. When they finally parted ways, there was an awkward moment as they stood beside Catherine's car. "Thank you for today," she said. "It's been refreshing." "It has," Marcus agreed. "Lily had a great time." "Just Lily?" Catherine asked with a small smile. Marcus felt his face warm. "I did too." "Good." Catherine hesitated, then added, "I'd like to do this again sometime. If that wouldn't be too strange." "I'd like that," Marcus replied, surprised by how much he meant it. The following Monday at work was surreal. In the office, Catherine was once again Ms. Reynolds, CEO, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, issuing directives and leading meetings with her usual authority. But there were small changes, a genuine "good morning" when she passed his desk, a moment of eye contact that lingered a beat longer than necessary, a thank you note for the weekend that appeared on his keyboard while he was at lunch. For weeks, they maintained this strange dual relationship, professional and distant at work, increasingly personal outside of it. Catherine joined them for movie nights and Sunday picnics. She helped Lily with a science project about animal habitats, drawing on knowledge from her mother's veterinary practice. She brought Marcus books she thought he'd enjoy and actually listened when he shared his thoughts on them. Gradually, Marcus began to see the woman behind the CEO facade, brilliant but lonely, driven but unfulfilled, powerful but unsure of what she really wanted from life. And Catherine began to see the depth of character that made Marcus who he was, his unwavering devotion to his daughter, his quiet intelligence, his ability to find joy in simple moments. 3 months after the holiday party, Catherine invited Marcus and Lily to dinner at her penthouse. She had transformed the usually sterile space with colorful pillows, family-style dishes on the dining table, and even a few framed photographs, one of which, Marcus noticed with surprise, was a candid shot of him and Lily laughing together in the park. After dinner, when Lily was absorbed in a movie Catherine had queued up for her, they stood together in the kitchen, washing dishes side by side. "I have something to tell you," Catherine said, her voice uncharacteristically nervous. "I've been thinking about making some changes." "What kind of changes?" Marcus asked, drying a plate. "Professional ones. Personal ones." She took a deep breath. "I'm stepping down as CEO." Marcus nearly dropped the plate. "What? Why?" "Because I'm not happy, Marcus. I haven't been for a long time. The company was my father's dream, not mine. I've spent 20 years trying to live up to his expectations, and I've lost myself in the process. What will you do instead?" Catherine smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face. "I'm going back to school. Veterinary school, actually. I'm 38 years old, and it's time I followed my own path." Marcus was stunned. "That's incredible. And brave." "It's terrifying," Catherine admitted. "But these past few months, spending time with you and Lily, I've realized something important. Life is too short to live it for someone else's approval." She placed a hand on his arm. "You taught me that, you know. The way you've built your life around what matters to you, not what others expect." Marcus felt a surge of emotion he couldn't quite name. "I'm just trying to do right by my daughter." "You're doing so much more than that. You're showing her what it means to live with integrity, to be true to yourself." Catherine's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Do you know how reality flickered in Jack's voice? What's that? We help thousands of families every year, she said softly. But we rarely ask them what they truly need. The following week, Alexandra arrived at the community center, not with cameras, not with press, but quietly. She observed, she spoke to single parents juggling 2 jobs. She saw broken equipment that hadn't been replaced in years. She watched Jack fix a leaking pipe while simultaneously helping a teenager fill out a college application form. Later, as they stood alone in the empty hallway, she turned to him. You don't just repair buildings, she said. You repair hope. Jack looked down, uncomfortable with praise. That I'm just doing my job. No, Alexandra replied gently. You're doing what my foundation should be doing, showing up. A month later, everything changed. The Winters Foundation announced a major expansion project, full funding for the community center's renovation, new educational programs, healthcare partnerships, and emergency housing assistance for struggling families. But that wasn't all. At the small press event, which Jack had tried to avoid attending, Alexandra stepped up to the podium. There is someone who reminded me why this work matters, she said, scanning the crowd until her eyes found Jack. A man who had every reason to keep walking, but chose integrity instead. Jack felt his throat tighten. Wealth can build buildings, Alexandra continued, but character builds communities. That is why I am honored to appoint Jack Bennett as Director of Community Outreach for the Winters Foundation. The room erupted in applause. Jack stood frozen. This wasn't charity, this was recognition. That evening, Jack sat at the kitchen table, but this time, there were no overdue bills in front of him. Lily ran into the room waving a newspaper clipping with his picture on it. Dad! You're famous. He laughed, pulling her into his arms. No, kiddo, he whispered. We're just, okay now. A knock came at the door. When Jack opened it, Alexandra stood there, not as a CEO, not as a millionaire, just as a woman smiling softly. That I wanted to say thank you, she said. You didn't just return my handbag that day. Jack raised an eyebrow. What else did I return? She held his gaze. You returned my faith in people. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lily peeked from behind Jack. Hi, purse lady. They all laughed, and in that small apartment, once filled with fear and unpaid notices, something else now filled the space: stability, respect, and the beginning of something neither of them had expected. Sometimes, the smallest act of honesty creates the biggest ripple, and sometime when you return what isn't yours, life returns something far greater. Sparkles. The end. Sparkles.